Right then, can we make a start? And welcome to the people in the back there, and also welcome to Leila Corran from Bridges Into Work, who is shadowing the Chief Executive today, and Gareth Davis from Community Services, who is shadowing the Assistant Chief Executive Resources. So we'll go straight into the meeting then, and its attendance, there's a book going round. Item 2 is apologies for absence. We're all right on that one. And item 3 is declarations of interest.
Thank you, Leader. As usual, members will have considered any interest that may be apparent when they read the papers, and I've had discussions with them. So in order to take members through item by item, if I can go through them, and then I'd ask each individual member to say they agree as I go through. So on item 7, the council tax base, Leader, you will have a prejudicial interest, which must mean you leave the room, because the report sets a discount for properties which are not a sole residence, which is applicable to you. So you agree that. On item 9, the secondary school consultation, a couple of interests here. Again, Leader, you have a prejudicial interest and must leave because your family home is immediately near the entrance to Fairwater School, so you'd be directly affected by any proposals. Councillor Hunt, you are a council-appointed governor of Llantarnam, is that correct? So that's a personal-only interest.
Yes, agreed.
And Councillor Richard Clark, you're a governor of Crossy-Ceiliog, which is a school that's mentioned in the report. So that's a personal interest as well. Is that agreed? Thank you. Councillor Jones, because the Leisure Trust leases part of the Fairwater Leisure Centre, that again is a personal-only interest. Is that agreed? Thank you. Going on to item 11 on the collaboration report, there is mention there of the Children's Centre in Newport, in which staff will be based. Councillor Morby, you're a non-council appointed trustee and director of the Aneurin Bevan Health Board, and that will be a personal-only interest. Is that agreed? Thank you. And then the last one on item 12 on welfare reform, 4 members, Councillors Hunt, Councillor Morby, Councillor Wellington and Councillor Jones, are members of the credit union, which is also mentioned. And again, that's a personal-only interest. Personal-only interest, members can stay and vote. Is that all agreed, members? If there are any other interests that become apparent as you go through, then they need to be declared as and when. Thank you.
Right, thanks for that. On now then to the Cabinet Minutes, which is item 4. Take us through these page by page. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that's it. Any comments anybody want to make on those minutes? All agreed? Go. Thanks so much. Now then, on to the action sheet, item 5, Chief Executive.
They're just there for members' information, Leader, unless there's any questions.
Right. Anybody got any questions to ask on the actions? No? On to item 6 then, the budget 2014-15 and medium term. This is Nigel Aurelius. Over to you, Nigel.
Thank you, Leader. I don't seem to be able to open the attachment, though. No, I don't need to look at it, but I think it needs to go up on the the screen, I presume, for the webcasting. Is anyone from ICT sorting that? I'll turn it off and turn it back. I presume this is. I was just. No. I got my copy here. I can. I'm okay. I mean, we've had a joint scrutiny committee on the budget, which has gone through it in some detail, and we've got a. We've had a full member seminar yesterday on the budget, so we have got an awful lot of information out in the public domain in relation to the budget and the budget proposals of the council. In terms of the report before members, which people can access and see on their screens, but not on the big screen.
Can I stop you there, Nigel? It's been important. Can somebody come and have another look at that? Because yes. On the webcast they won't be able to see it. Hang on now, pray. Come on now. Is that there now? Right, fine.
Okay, so starting from the beginning again then. There's been a joint scrutiny committee last week on the budget, which was, a departure from previous years, where individual scrutiny committees considered their relevant parts, whereas now there's a joint scrutiny which considered the totality of the budget and the totality of the mitigation measures that the council is looking at. There was also an all-member seminar yesterday, which also went through the budget. So I wasn't going to go through the report in the fullest of detail because it's there for people to read and members have had a good awareness. A couple of points I was going to pick up that are new to this report and are different to the overall budget. But in summary terms around the budget, I mean, members know we're facing the worst budget that we've had ever within the public sector and within local government in Wales. We're looking at a minus 4% reduction. We've had about £5.6 million taken off our resource base, and we need to absorb the pressures, and we're looking at over £11 million worth of pressures. In terms of the provisional settlement, we have made a response to the Welsh Government. and that is attached to the Cabinet report and is now in the public domain. We have a couple of questions, particularly in relation to final grant information, where a number of members, both at joint scrutiny and in the member seminar yesterday, wanted to make us wanted us to make the points to the Welsh Government quite forcibly that the paucity of grant information at this point in the decision making is simply not acceptable. And I think if you read my response to the settlement, it says that. I'd like to think that my response to the settlement is balanced in recognising that we have had a number of years of protection in relation to local government within Wales, and we're still in a better position than English councils in relation to our settlement, even at -4. But I've just put up there on the screen, and they're there in paragraph 5.7, the overriding comments that I made in relation to the settlement. Obviously, we'd have to express disappointment that there was a misleading headline figure. We would express some disappointment over the significant reduction in our funding levels. I've highlighted that formal notification at an earlier point in time would have stopped some of the stuff that was going on in the summer around what the level is likely to be. We supported the principle of a floor mechanism, even though Torfaen didn't benefit from it this time. Similarly, we recognise that local government have received protection. We have drawn out the added difficulties the protection of any service brings in terms of choices, acknowledging that the Minister has been clear that council tax is a matter for you as elected members to set, but also that she expects this year that there will be a rise, and again the paucity of final grant information. The rest of the report in terms of the progress in relation to the budget is well known to members, but I think members know that we're at quite an advanced stage. We have a set of mitigation measures in place. We asked all services to identify -4%. We asked for that at an early point in time that allowed you as members to consider what that meant and chief officers to consider what that meant. We had a first draft set of estimates by early to mid-October. Pressures of £11.2 million to address, and as members will know from joint scrutiny last week, we have a full suite of measures identified to bring that into balance, with the exception of any decisions that you make on council tax, which will come later in the process. In terms of joint scrutiny, the report makes reference to joint scrutiny in paragraph 6.5. And it also makes reference to the fact that I'd update on that in this meeting, because it took place after the publication of the report. It was a well-attended joint scrutiny. There was a lot of questioning, both at a headline level and a detailed level. All chief officers were there to answer questions in relation to their service area. Scrutiny went through every service area and asked questions. In the main, I think there were questions around understanding and around detail, and requested more information on certain savings measures. There were some concerns raised, but certainly the overwhelming feeling was one of wanting to understand more the measure and what the service implications would be. We have to supply that information, the information that all members asked for by the end of this week, whereupon joint scrutiny will be able to finalise their recommendations or points that they wish you as the executive to consider in taking the decisions in January. So that's why this report doesn't ask you to make any decisions on the mitigation measures that are before scrutiny at this point in time, to allow for the proper scrutiny and proper consultation process. They'll be brought back to you in January for you to make the final decisions to recommend to Council in January. We've got a number of corporate proposals which are highlighted in the report by which to help the current situation, and they are there in the paragraph on the screen in terms of adjusting our assumed council tax collection rate. There's a report coming afterwards on that from 95 to 98%. Something around extending the period by which we account for and repay off our corporate loans. decommitting an element of the unallocated budget that's currently within our base, and undertaking a review of third-party spend, which basically is everything we spend money on which is not employees. And those together come to over £2 million, which has helped with the overall balance. So that's where we are in terms of the budget. The report brings out a number of risks relating to the budget, relating to pay. We've made a pay assumption of 1%, which is less than the trade unions will want to will put in terms of a claim, but it's what we can afford. We're waiting on the actuarial evaluation in relation to the pension fund to be concluded. I'm assuming that we're going to keep receiving our full outcome agreement grant, and that our performance will allow us to do that. There's something in there around welfare reform and how we're proposing to manage that by hopefully establishing a welfare reserve at the closing of the 13-14 accounts. And then there's something, the last two risks are, there's something about the sheer number and breadth and depth of the mitigation measures we've got before us because of the situation all local authorities find themselves in, and the fact that we've got to manage those and bring them in by the 1st of April, and then just recognising that until we know the grant information, we simply don't know what the impact is going to be for those services and jobs that are underpinned by grants. I refer in the report to some early thoughts for 2015-16 and the following 2 years, because we have recognised as part of last year's budget that we were going to have a 4-year approach to this year's budget, and we have identified measures for certainly 15-16 that we can start to consider in early in the new year, and we have our forward indication from Welsh Government, although we've just got to be cautious and model around that, because we don't know what the Chancellor of the Exchequer is going to do with the forward indications, and then we don't know what Welsh Government are going to do if the Chancellor of the Exchequer moves some things forward. The final part of the report just updates you on in-year monitoring, which continues to go well, continues to show an improving position, continues to show that our discipline is holding, and in particular you will see that the social care position has improved considerably from month 4 to month 6, and with an expectation that it will continue to improve as Sue and her colleagues work the budget to bring it back into a balance. And I think our in-year discipline and balancing our budgets in-year is something that we do well in Torfaen, and it is part of that collective discipline that we all show, both members and officers, to make sure that we bring things in on balance. The conclusions to the report make it quite clear that this is not an easy budget. It's not been an easy process. We've still got a lot to do before it finally gets concluded in the new year. But at the moment, we seem reasonably well advanced with a set of proposals that honour the protection in relation to schools funding, and there was a very positive schools forum last Friday, where very positive comments were made by the chair of that forum. We seek to protect our commitment to the vulnerable by not asking social care to make a 4% reduction. We've tried to avoid shutting services or ceasing them completely, rather reconfiguration and reducing. There is elements where certain sectors are going to pay a little bit more to protect the whole. We've tried to protect waste funding and absorb the grant loss there. And we believe there are a balance of efficiency, transformation and reduction. And there are a number of posts at risk, but we are working those, and we are hoping to really minimise the numbers of job loss through compulsory redundancies, which is why at the moment we're regarding those posts as at risk, and we're doing a voluntary redundancy trawl to try and help us in that. So, a very difficult budget. I think we're approaching it in the right way. The proposals are now out for scrutiny. They'll come back to you for approval in January following that scrutiny process. And also in January, I think we need to move on to 2015-16 to try and make some sense of that in sort of parameter terms so that we can be early again because I think for 15-16, we'll need to be a little more transformatory again, and the earlier start, the better.
Right, thank you for that report, Nigel. I just want, before I call Anthony, I want to thank the Cabinet members and the officers for the way that they worked together to get us thus far. And I suspect that there'll be one or two that want to ask questions. But first of all, Anthony.
And thanks for that, Leader. I'd echo that. I think the way that we've worked together as a team on this one's been exactly the right way to approach such a difficult budget. And I know I sound like a stuck record saying this, and apologies to those who've heard this 10 times before, but I think it bears repeating. Just the unprecedented situation that we find ourselves in. Even in the 1980s, there wasn't such a sustained and severe cuts to public services. And that's not through our choice. That's something that we have to deal with. But it does make difficult choices unavoidable. Our job really, faced with that, is to plot the least worst way through and protect frontline services wherever we can. Now, there's undoubtedly some tough choices in the savings measures we've outlined, and we want to be open with people, but we really have to be honest with people as well and say that it is a case of if not this, then what? Unfortunately, as I said, there have to be tough choices. That's the situation we find ourselves in, having to save £11 million this year on top of £33 million in the 5 years previously. So I think it's important to say that to members of the public that the situation is a tough one, and we would be dishonest if we tried to imply that we could avoid tough choices. But having said that, I believe this budget does strike the right balance, as difficult as it is. Nigel's mentioned the £2 million of corporate proposals, a very sort of dry phrase, but it's something that we've tried to do to take some of the pressure away from frontline services. He mentioned the protection for schools that was welcomed at the Schools Forum. I think that's the right thing to do, and I think it shows our values in action. As with social care have faced a very tough situation trying to absorb their pressures, but I think it's the right thing for us to do, to stand up for the vulnerable people in our communities, to accept them from the need to make 4% of further cuts. As Nigel said, we've tried to protect frontline service wherever possible, try to avoid closures, and we've also tried to minimise job losses. And that's something that's sometimes a little bit controversial in the Chamber, but I think it's worth emphasising at this point how valuable the members of staff who work for us are, because without them there are no services. And I think sometimes local government workers sort of take a lot of stick through unfair sort of misinterpretations of their image. The average person that works for us, I think the median pay is £17,000. So we're not talking about highly paid people here. We're talking about frontline, often modestly paid workers who do a great job for our communities. And I think it's right, both for them and for the local economy as a whole, that we try to avoid job losses where at all possible. And I just pay tribute to the people who are here long before me who've taken that approach as a council. And it's something I think we want to continue where we can. I think it's also worth finally saying thank you to the members who attended joint scrutiny. There was 3.5 hours, I think, with chief officers present, and thanks to them also. Lots of thorough questions, a thorough approach that's constructive, and asked the questions that have needed to be asked without sort of veering towards grandstanding. And I think that's worth pointing out, and I think that's worth crediting members with. On top of that was a well-attended seminar yesterday, and similarly there was the opportunity for members to ask questions and for the public to sort of hear what we're trying to do. I think that's the right way to go forward with this. As we've said all along, it's not business as usual. It's not a normal year, so I think it's right then that we've given members and members of the public the chance to sort of come along and sort of and understand sort of where we're coming from.
Right, thanks for that, Anthony. John Cunningham.
Just a comment, if I may, Chairman, on the process. I think that, as Anthony referred to about the seminar we had yesterday, I think it was probably one of the better attended seminars that I've ever been to. Obviously because it was quite an emotive subject. But I think the questions that were asked yesterday were, as Nigel said, points of clarification more than sort of drilling down into the the general issue on the budget. But I think that as a result, and I've got to pay compliment to the fact that we had this joint scrutiny, because people, I think, were very well aware then about the issues that we've got. And Nigel said that scrutiny did express some concerns about some issues. Well, I have to say that we all will express those concerns as well. You know, they're not unique in that, because we're all concerned about the way we're going. But I think to pay compliment to the process that we've had with the budget seminars that we've had, with the joint scrutiny committees, with the PDFs and many others, to bring us to the realisation about the magnitude of the difficulties we face. And my compliments to all those who organised that.
Right, thank you, John. Anybody else? No, thanks very much, sir. All agree? Sure. On now to the next item. Yeah, I think this is the one when I need to leave.
Okay, the next item is the council tax base for 2014-2015. Over to Nigel.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. This is a report we consider every year at this time, where we have to formally set the tax base. It's obviously it's already been submitted as a draft to the Welsh Government to allow them to formulate the final settlement. I don't intend to go through this report in detail. I think the two key changes this year obviously we've increased our collection rate assumption from 95 to 98%. Members will recall this time last year we were reducing the assumed collection rate on the basis that we thought the new council tax reduction scheme would be less than 100% support for those who formerly in receipt of council tax benefit and now in receipt of council tax reduction support. As it transpired, there was a decision made in January by the then Minister for Local Government to make it a 100% scheme. That continues on into 2014-15, and therefore we think it appropriate to reverse that. We also think it's appropriate to actually increase it beyond that. Our collection exceeds 98%, and therefore we think it's appropriate to move it from 95 to 98%. What that does is effectively increase your council tax base and effectively brings the money that is gained within your budget. It doesn't actually increase the money we get, it just brings it from sitting outside the budget in a collection fund and into the budget, and therefore can be used. And it's one of those corporate measures that's assisting with the overall budget. The second thing I just want to bring out in the recommendations, and it's around Class C discounts, and these are unfurnished second properties. The report makes it, or makes a point that what we need to do within Torfaen is to try and bring those properties into occupied use, rather than remaining unfurnished. And it suggests that from the 1st of April 2015, so in other words, we're giving those people who do have a second home and currently benefit from, after the 6-month period, a 50% discount in their council tax. This report recommends that from the 1st of April 2015, they'll receive no protection on their council tax and therefore will pay the full amount, which seems entirely reasonable as a way of trying to get people to either sell those properties or rent them out or make them available for the housing community. And I would have thought that's something that housing colleagues would support. And the fact that we're making that recommendation now, people have plenty of notice around that, but certainly housing colleagues have a lever then to try and get those properties back into use. So that's the two key changes from this report. Otherwise it's the standard report recommending the council tax base. You'll see it's gone up significantly, but it's gone up significantly primarily due to the change in collection rate.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. Anthony, do you wish to say it?
No, just to say that both steps that Nigel's outlined are sensible ways forward, especially in the current climate.
Okay, thank you. Grenada?
Yes, thanks, Deputy Leader. Nigel, it was interesting yesterday, and my apologies for not being at the seminar, but I was at the WLGA meeting of Cabinet Members for Housing, and one of the proposals there is about how we deal with empty properties and the council tax. And I'm very pleased to hear that the proposal will be that councils will be able to increase council tax for empty properties which are blighting our communities. I mean, every member here probably got an empty church, chapel, house or whatever, and some owners some we can't find, some not interested, these problems need to be addressed. So hopefully when this comes about, we'll see a change in empty properties.
Thank you, Grenada. I'm sure we all agree with what the sentiments of the WLGA, because there's a national shortage of homes, and to see places empty and benefiting from council tax discount, it's where there are genuine cases, but there's lots of cases that those are houses or properties that really ought to be back into use. Any other member wish to comment? Okay, everybody vote on the recommendation. Thank you all. Cheers.
Right, we're now on the item 8, is it? Right then, item 8, which is the application to Welsh Government for funding under the Vibrant and Viable Places. This is Christina. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Leader, and good morning, members. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to submit a Stage 2 application under the Welsh Government's Vibrant and Viable Places programme. The Vibrant and Viable Places programme is a new targeted regeneration investment fund from Welsh Government, and it essentially replaces the Heads of the Valley Fund, which previously we've done very well in accessing funding from. And also from 2017, it will actually incorporate the Neighbourhood Renewal Areas budget. Cabinet gave approval back in July for officers to submit a Stage 1 application. And we were one of 11 successful local authorities from an initial round of 22 applications, so all 22 local authorities across Wales bid for this programme, and we were one of 11 to gain approval to proceed to Stage 2, which is the next stage for the bid. The closing date for the application was yesterday. We have submitted the bid as a tentative bid on the basis that approval is provided this morning. The proposed project takes into account key criteria set by Welsh Government in assessing applications, and those key criteria include improving the viability of failing town centres, supporting community first areas, providing new housing, job creation, investment that we're able to lever into the area, and supporting people back into work. In addition, the proposed project considers the theme and focus of the next round of European funding, because this is a key opportunity for us to match it in with the funding we're able to bid for under Vibrant and Viable Places. And the focus on EU Structural Fund is now on growth, and that is quite different to what the last round of European funding focused on, because that was very much around deprivation. So as a result, the proposed project focuses on linking community first clusters to employment opportunities, which are provided through improved transport and digital infrastructure, provision of training and the delivery of key housing and mixed-use developments around Pontypool and at the canal side, which is a new proposed development, along with the restoration of the Monmouthshire and Brecon Canal. So essentially we are using the emerging city region model, that it's about bringing people from the north of the borough down into Pontypool and into Cwmbran, where our concentration of employment is. A key factor for members to consider as well is that this proposal does not include any match funding for capital works from the council, aside from some land, which I'll cover in a moment. So the proposal for funding includes a strong element of housing and can be clearly linked to the viability of town centres, The focus, like I said, is on linking people to employment opportunities provided through improved transport and digital infrastructure, training and the delivery of key housing and new developments. I'd like to just refer you to 5.5 in the report, which outlines the key elements of the project. And it's interesting to note Councillor Clark's previous comments around empty properties, because this bid actually does target an element of that within Pontypool. So in 5.5 in the report, I'll just outline the key elements of the report, of the proposal. So in Pontypool, we are proposing the refurbishment of Hypervalue, and we would look to renovate that property for residential use on the upper floors and also commercial use on the ground floors, possibly for people practicing creative industries. And that proposal has been developed with our colleague RSLs. So a nice project there, which I know we've been looking to target for a long time. St James's Church, we're looking to renovate that as a multifunctional cultural stroke community space, and we are proposing that would be operated by a social or a community enterprise trust, and they would have responsibility for all the maintenance costs of that building. Again, in partnership with our RSLs and the Pontypool Development Trust, we would look at the key gateways into Pontypool and in the town centre. So properties that are emptied and need renovation would actually be renovated, and then we are able then to concentrate Pontypool town centre for commercial activity, because at the moment it's quite stretched, and we would like to concentrate that in. Another proposal in the project is around a property-stroke deposit loan schemes for housing, and an element of the project would provide a targeted interest-free recyclable loan fund to support people who need help to get on the mortgage ladder, on the property ladder, and also it would provide a pot of funding for private landlords to access to undertake small-scale refurbishment renovation projects in Pontypool. Then the Canal Side Quarter, which is a development that is included in our LDP, and we're proposing that we would create a new flagship residential-led mixed-use destination on the canal, and the location is adjacent to Cwmbran Town Centre. And what that would provide, using the canal, it would provide a link from Blanavon World Heritage Site right the way down through the borough, linking into the city region as well on a regional basis. That proposal, that development would include new housing, commercial and cultural facilities at Cwmbran Canal site, and it would also include a new canal basin and renewable energy facilities on those new properties. Again, using the Mononbrett Canal theme, we would look at the Pontymoyle Basin, and we are now calling it Pontypool Basin, and we would look to open the canal up between Pontypool and Cwmbran to allow that to be navigable. And that links in with new cycle routes and footpath links as well to allow more accessible transportation and movement along those areas. Picking up the transport theme as well, so in terms of making it easier for people to move around the borough, we are looking at improving Pontypool New Inn Station and also the A4043, so the main arterial route running up through the borough, looking at improving accessibility along that road network. And complementing that, we are proposing the creation of an integrated cycle network that connects all the key housing and employment sites dotted up and down the borough. And finally, in terms of digital infrastructure, we are proposing that Pontypool Town Centre has a free broadband access that would allow visitors and commercial activity to be really harnessed in the town centre. So the project is actually, you will note that the project total estimated programme costs are £80.5 million, so a significant project, with around £30 million being sought from VVP, so from the Welsh Government. And you can see that the remainder of that funding is being levered in through other sources of external funding, funding brought by our RSLs, and also with regards to the canal side development, funding from the private sector. Obviously, it's a significant project, and I'm mindful that, as you know, Nigel's outlined in our budget and the way forward, we are in the area of reducing resources, and we are mindful that if we are successful with this project, that a significant amount of staff resources will be required to deliver this project, not only within neighbourhood services, but right the way across the council. And that is something that we have factored into the bid. With regards to neighbourhood services, we would look at reprioritising existing workload and also with accessing some other forms of external funding to allow for additional staff resources to be brought in. If I could just refer you to point 5.8 in the report, because it's an important factor. With regard to the canal side development, the current viability assessment indicates that insufficient Section 106 funding would be available to include affordable housing and recreation within the scheme. This is a consequence of the scheme contributing to the costs associated with the restoration of the canal at Pontymoyle, between Pontymoyle and Cwmbran, and also the creation of the canal basin and associated public space around it. Whilst market conditions may change prior to the scheme being delivered, I just need to bring to members' attention that there will be no affordable housing included in the current preferred proposals for the canal side development. However, should those circumstances change as we progress through the bid, of course members will be informed accordingly and the housing mix would be reviewed. Significant consultation has taken place with a range of stakeholders and partners to develop Stage 2 of the bid, including our RSLs, the private sector, various training providers, Public Health Wales, Glandwr Cymru, the Canal and River Trust, cultural organisations and the voluntary sector. Discussions have also taken place with key funders such as Heritage Lottery Funding, Arts Council and the Welsh European Funding Office, and all of which have been very supportive of our proposals. I'd like to take you to 5.11 of the report, which outlines the estimated outputs. So for that £80.5 million of investment, what are we looking to get out of it? You can see that the investment that would be brought in on the back of that proposal is £126 million in terms of investment that would be brought into the borough and the impact on our local economy. Jobs created, we are estimating 1,709 jobs that were created. People supported into work, 263, and new improved homes, 285. They are quite specific, and I know when I took this proposal to the Local Service Board for endorsement, the question was asked of me by the Chair, how come we can be so specific about them. We have had some external assistance with this through a company called Wavehill, because that is one of our requirements for a successful bid, is that we need to be very specific of what the outcomes are for the investment that would be made. So we are able to provide those figures with a high level of confidence. The proposals included in the application have the potential to have a transformational impact on Torfaen's economy, environment and our communities. But I just would like to bring to your attention that even if the Welsh Government approves Stage 2 of the application, there is still a lot of work to do to develop this proposal. This has been a whole authority approach to regeneration, and whilst it's been led by Kath Thomas and Dave Evans, there has been contribution from all of the organisation and also our partners, and I'd just like to congratulate both Dave and Kath for bringing this proposal together, because it is a significant bid. In terms of the next steps, which are outlined in Section 9 of the report, in terms of the next steps, subject to approval here this morning, we will inform Welsh Government of the decision and that Welsh Government accept our application. Welsh Government will inform applications at the end of January, and at this stage I will bring back a report or a verbal update to members to inform you of the outcome of that. And we will keep you informed if we hear of anything else in the meantime. Like I said, the proposal is a big project. It's not without its risks, and those risks are captured within Section 8 of the report, and you can see that we have offered mitigation for all of the risks we've identified. So I'd just like to finally take you to section 12, which is the recommendations, and I'm seeking approval from Cabinet to submit the stage 2 application to Welsh Government, and that decision, if you're minded to approve it, that the decision be implemented as a matter of urgency due to the need to inform Welsh Government. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that, Chris. You are right. This has been a whole authority approach, and there's few departments that haven't been involved in it. This project is hugely important to Torfaen and touches most of the borough. And I'm sure other colleagues will want to make some comments on it in a minute. I want to congratulate our officers for getting through the first round. We're now into the second round, and we've got a very, very good chance of succeeding. If we do, then this will be one of the biggest projects that we've done in the lifetime of this authority, and will touch all sides of authority. So let me bring in Lewis first.
Yes, I'd also like to congratulate the officers. You know, the amount of work that's gone into this is absolutely phenomenal. There's no guarantee that we're going to get the scheme, but it's not for the want of trying. You know, when you look at it, the amount of benefit, not only for people looking for a home, people who want to get back and forth to work every day. You know, the Pontypool Road station has been gone out to practically nothing. It's hard to get a train there now. You know, and with transport costs the way they are and congestion on the roads, it's imperative that we get a decent rail station at Pontypool Road. Additional benefits, you know, are the leisure pursuits on the canal, and you know, the whole thing is something I never thought we'd ever see. And perhaps we won't see it, but like I say, it won't be for the want of trying. And once again, I'd like to congratulate the officers on the work they've done in such a short time. It wasn't so long ago we met the minister in town and took him around town and showed him empty shops and whatever. And a bit of good work that had been done by the Pontypool Development Trust. So everybody knows the state of the old Hyper Value building, and even worse, the state of the St James's Church. If these buildings could be brought back into use, you know, not only is the jobs there, but also the feeling within the community, because this is going to fly in the face of the national trend where towns are slowly dying. And if we could get this scheme, it would actually be a huge boost to Pontypool and the valleys. Yeah, thanks.
Right, thank you for that, Lou. Good night.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I agree with everything that's been said. It's really pleasing to know that we are one of the 11 that are going to be considered for the next round. The only disappointment for me is 5.8, and there's no provision for affordable housing on the canal side, which is quite sad, really. The other thing that I'm disappointed in is I would have liked to have seen more road infrastructure, especially in the north, because we're talking about moving people through and getting into employment, and that's something that needs to be addressed in the future, because it really is a major problem, especially in the north of the borough. But this is excellent news, and I just hope that we succeed, because, as the leader said, it covers everything in every community right to Torfaen. Thank you, Christina.
Right, John Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it is a wonderful initiative, but can I just focus in on the Pontypool particular element of it, because I think that's one of our biggest challenges in the Pontypool area, and it's encouraging to see that the Hyper Valley was included, the old St James's Church. Running alongside this particular project, is there still a potential for the RSLs to get involved anyway with some of our empty properties that we've got? You mentioned one particular one, the Hyper Value, and putting accommodation upstairs in there. Contrary to popular belief, I know that we as a council don't own most of the shops which are empty or most of the properties which are empty. So would there be an element of CPO in order to try and encourage to get some of our, on the question that Gonaira raised earlier, some of our derelict properties in the Pontypool area turned into some sort of townhouses, residential properties, etc.?
Okay, I'm just referring back to the main elements of the project, and just a moment, section 5.5. It does include the third point, in partnership with the RSLs and the Development Trust, looking at key properties within the borough, that, within Pontypool rather, that need to be renovated. So it was there that we would be looking to work very closely with the RSLs to look at, are there any opportunities to renovate vacant properties for either homes, for housing, or for commercial enterprises. So yes is the answer, that it's already included, and the fact that the RSLs have been very keen to come to the table with this proposal. I'm quite confident that any other opportunities that come to the table as a result of working on this project will be maximised. So yes is the answer, it's already covered in there.
Good. Anybody else?
Can I come back?
Yeah, Lewis?
Yeah, just to support what Christina is saying, John. You know, if we look at the outskirts of Pontypool, look around on the Clarence and all, there's still businesses out on the Clarence, and, you know, it would be nice to see some of those businesses come into the town, take over empty properties in the middle of the town, and leave those properties on the Clarence to be developed for housing, you know, and that's one of the aspirations. Thanks.
Right, anybody else? Because, as he said, Hyper Valley, Pontypool Road Station, the possibility of doing the dream of Cwmbran by doing the canal. This is an excellent project. Congratulations to all our officers. And if and when we succeed, then we'll make a fuss of you. Right, all agreed with the report. Thanks so much. Right, here we go. Back now then to... Now then, the next one is item 9, I think, yeah, which is 21st Century Schools, consultation on the removal of surplus secondary school places, and this is John Tushingham. I can leave this on. No problem. It's not stopping. I believe in it.
Okay, John.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Good morning, everybody. We're looking to advance the next component of the Council's 21st Century Schools programme, Band-Aid proposals. This one relates specifically to the removal of surplus places in our secondary education provision. And in short, it relates to the closure of Fairwater High School from September 15, the closure of Llantarnam School from September 15, formation of a new school on the Fairwater High School site from September 2015, and in parallel with all of that, a review of the catchment areas covering Llantarnam, Fairwater and Crossy Caerdiol. There is a significant issue with surplus places in the south of the borough in particular, and if you look towards section 5 of the report, it provides you some specific details on the capacity of Fairwater and Llantarnam schools and the numbers of learners that are currently in those two schools. You'll see some significant reductions, and as we move further forward towards September 2018, which is as far as we can project with any certainty at the moment, those numbers drop even more. We are assuming in the figures going forward that sixth form education will continue in our current sixth forms, although discussions obviously are still ongoing with colleague Gwent and Welsh Government about proposals for the transformation agenda of post-16 education. If we advance these proposals within the time frame that we include in the report, which I'll refer to slightly later, then we will be able to achieve Welsh Government's targets for surplus places by 2015, and that's quite critical. A target is a target, but essentially what we're talking about here is we have empty seats, and the financial viability of schools operating with a large number of empty seats is obviously a concern when budget pressures are what they are. This is, at the moment, just a proposal for consultation, and section 5.8 talks about the areas which we will expand upon in a consultation document. They're the areas that we need to cover under the code that came in October 2011, but they're no different really to the areas that we've covered in all previous proposals where school closures have been concerned. The difference with this one perhaps is that we have to look to which site would be the preferred site going forward should the two schools close. And for reasons that are detailed in the report, Fairwater has been identified at this stage as that preferred site. And the logic for that is quite simple really, that it is more at the centre of the learner population in the area than the Lanternum site. And there's an appendix to your report which attempts to try and show that diagrammatically. When we put the consultation document together, we will also include specific numbers which show in and out of catchment figures where each school draws its main learner population from and project that forwards as well using the available information. The timetable for the proposals being advanced is included at paragraph 5.9. Apologies, I'm going back and forth a little bit in this report. Subject to your approval today, we're looking to begin the consultation in January, February of next year. It isn't an ideal time to do a consultation around the Christmas period for obvious reasons, so we're going to do that in January. I would assume more January than February at this point. We'll bring the information from those consultations back to Cabinet in March and April. And really the timetable thereafter very much depends on future decisions that you will want to take. Really just to take you then to the recommendations. That's paragraph 11. It is, as I said previously, the closure of 2 of the secondary schools from September 2015, formation of a new school on the Fairwater site from September 2015, and in parallel with that, a review of the catchment areas for Lantern, Fairwater and Crossy Carliog. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Brian?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Leader. I don't want to say much. I think just a couple of points to emphasise. One, that this is a consultation exercise that you're being asked to approve today on a proposal which I think is a sound one, but we must listen to what we are told as a consequence of going out to consultation. But it is a proposal which is wholly in tune with the 21st Century School programme that was agreed by Council back in 2011. Closing schools is always controversial, and this will be no exception. Indeed, some controversy has already been engendered on the social media sites, including a suggestion that the proposal that the preferred site for the new school, or the new location for the school, would be Fairwater, is being pursued on financial grounds. I just want to categorically deny that. That is simply untrue. It is conjecture, and it is wrong, factually as well as prospectively for the future. So I think this consultation exercise will be a tricky one, in the sense that nobody likes their school to be subject to a closure proposal, but it's something that we need to do, because if we don't address the issue of surplus places, then the Welsh Government will very likely require us to do so, and we need to remember that we are a council in special measures as far as education is concerned. The Minister at any time can decide to remove our powers and to take over the decision making. So we need to be sensible, we need to listen to what people have to say, but we need to take action to reduce surplus places, otherwise we're likely to have significant financial penalties as a consequence.
Thank you, Brian. Anthony?
Obviously, to start with, I'll repeat the interest I declared before as a governor at Lanternum School. But I'm welcome the fact that you've emphasised that this is a consultation and that people will be listened to, and I recognise this is going to be a difficult decision to take forward, whichever way around it was approached. Just to really emphasise that from here, I think we need to go out and communicate with parents and the community as much as we can to reassure them that this is about our genuine longer-term vision for education for that part of Cwmbran. The site, we need to make clear that the reasons for the preference, and I welcome that in the report, and reassure people how we'll work to improve the selected site. Also, that the pupils and staff of both schools will be treated equally going forward. I welcome the fact that this is presented very much as an equal solution for both schools going forward, not as a takeover of one or the other, and that's something I think we need to emphasise. I also welcome your reassurance that the facts don't bear out some of the claims that have been going around that this is about money, and that certainly tallies with what I've seen. But again, that's something I think we need to emphasise to people. I also welcome the fact that you've said very categorically that doing nothing is not an option that the Welsh Government would tolerate, and I think we need to make that clear. I mean, that the facts are quite stark going forwards, and there are obviously budgetary implications if we continue to fund 2 schools when there's that level of surplus places, and that's that's also shows that there's a genuine educational issue going forwards here. Also, another thing I think we need to think about very carefully is how we provide the transition for pupils, especially. I'm thinking particularly of those in maybe years 10 and 11 in the middle of their GCSEs and those in the middle of A-levels. We need to communicate with both schools to make sure that transition is handled as best as possible. But thank you for the approach that you've taken this morning.
Thank you, Anthony. Gwenera?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Leader. The projection of the combined numbers are quite low as well. That's concerning, and that could be down to a variety of reasons. But do you think perhaps the main reason is because many of the children now we are seeing coming through the Welsh education system are the ones that perhaps are affecting the English schools?
I think that will have some impact, yes, but I don't think at the moment it's a significant impact. What's really hitting here is the population changes over time, and communities ageing in certain areas tends to lead to a reduction in the number of youngsters in that area, so the demand moves around a little bit. There's a couple of points of particular interest that this map raises, really, and that's a significant number of learners that traditionally have come from Newport to go to Llantarnam, and we've started to see already a pullback to Bettws, which obviously had the benefit of a new school recently, and we expect that pullback to continue, so the numbers could change again to reduce the number that will be coming through to Llantarnam. There's also a historical anomaly, if I can say it, in the northwest part of this particular combined catchment. If you look immediately above where the dot is for Fair Water Comprehensive, to the area that's got if I can show on here, there. It's northwest Cwmbran, and particularly the Thornhill estate, which is actually part of Llantarnam's catchment. And I understand that was probably as a result of when the new town was being developed, so it's pre-1996. There was no capacity or insufficient capacity at Fairwater to actually house them, so it was included in the Llantarnam catchment. Clearly, it doesn't make any sense to have children going past a school to get to school. And in terms of the 21st Century School programme, there are lots of things that we set, or the Council set and agreed as its aspirations, and the biggest thing is to have a school in the right place for all of the benefits that brings.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? If not, before I move the recommendation, I think I should have repeated my personal interest as a member of the Leisure Trust, which is running Fairwater Leisure Centre. There are 4 recommendations there. Is everybody in approval? Move. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks for that. Can I just explain for those of us on the webcast that any member that lives in or around a property or anything else which is under discussion has to leave when that debate is taking place. Do you want to explain it, Linda? Because they might want to know why I'm going up and down all the time.
I think, members, obviously the Code of Conduct is designed so that members declare any links they have, and where there is an immediate impact on the proposal before you, then that usually triggers a prejudicial interest, which means, a member of the public would think that a councillor couldn't act impartially, and hence you don't take part in that decision. Is that sufficient, Leader?
Right, thanks so much. That's good. Yeah. Well, then.
You haven't got worms then.
Sorry?
You haven't got worms.
No. Right then, we're on now then to item 10, which is the reallocation of the duties of the Deputy Chief Executive on his retirement. Before you just come in, we'll obviously have lots to say about Peter when he finishes at the last council. But I just want to remind members that he's been here for 24 years. But I'm sure members will leave it until the council before they say their words of farewell. So over to the Chief Executive, who's going to take us through this paper.
Thank you, Leader. I think the first thing to say is that Peter is, as an individual, obviously irreplaceable, but we're going to do our best in his absence to manage the duties he currently holds. So the key facts, members, are that Peter will be retiring as Deputy Chief Executive on the 16th of January 2013, but actually his last day because of leave will be Christmas Eve this year. And clearly we are in difficult budgetary times, and we must take our share of the pain across the organisation, and not replacing somebody at a very senior level in the council means that we can make a substantial saving. And in this case, the saving with on costs will be around £126,000. So that is something that's already been taken into account in terms of the budget that Nigel's just been talking about. Just to be clear on the constitutional position regarding this report, the decision is as to the allocation of duties amongst the council staff, including at senior level, is my decision as head of paid service. So this is by way of a consultation with the Cabinet as to the proposals that I'm making as to how we will manage Peter's duties once he has left the council. But the council itself needs to take a decision to change the structure of the senior management team. So today is by way of a consultation, and then we will take a report to Council on the 10th of December, which will ask the Council to delete the post from the senior management structure. So, members, the paragraphs set out at paragraph 5 onwards are setting out where I propose that the duties will be allocated. They fall into 4 specific categories. The first one is, once we won't have a Deputy Chief Executive anymore, we will need somebody to cover my duties if I'm on leave, or if I'm sick, or if I go under a bus. Please God, no. So the recommendation there is that Nigel, as Assistant Chief Exec Resources, should deputise in my absence. The second set of responsibilities really is around support for the leader, and particularly the arrangements for Cabinet and Council, where Peter currently makes arrangements for those agendas and briefs the leader before the meetings. It's proposed that I will take on those responsibilities, and that will include a weekly briefing for the leader on a Monday. The third set of duties, which is probably the largest element of Peter's job, is the management of 3 sets of discrete services: strategic services, customer services and emergency management. The strategic services are set out at 5.3. They're quite comprehensive. They are the services that are overseen managerially by Richard Edmonds. So it's communications improvement, democratic services, scrutiny, member support, European funding, regulation support, elections and leadership team support. It's proposed that whilst those functions will continue to be managed by Richard Edmonds, I will take over the line management of those services that Peter currently has. In terms of customer services, it is proposed that Richard Edmonds directly manages those services, but then again I will manage him in managing those. And lastly, emergency management, which has many synergies with neighbourhood services. It is proposed that Christina Harry takes over managing those services, which Peter currently manages. And then the fourth category, members, is around a number of different cross-cutting corporate boards and meetings that Peter either chairs or attends, and you will see that at 5.6 there's a number of proposals that different members of the leadership team should take on different parts of those roles. So those are my proposals, members. I think it would be remiss of me not to point out to you that there are risks around not having a senior management post, particularly someone who's played such an important part in the life of the council. I think the main risk is in terms of the capacity of the people that are taking on those responsibilities, because none of us are twiddling our thumbs at the moment. We all put in an awful lot of hours, and that will be a lot of additional responsibilities, and that may affect people's ability to respond to members as quickly as they may wish to do in some of the issues they're dealing with. Also, I think there is a risk which perhaps isn't immediately obvious around my role, in that part of the role of a chief executive is to influence, to bring resources into the council, to protect the council's profile and reputation and to enhance it, and that involves the chief executive being out and about, certainly in Welsh Government with partner agencies at a very senior level, and you will see that I'm taking on a lot of responsibilities, and my capacity to do that will be diminished. And I would hope that that won't have an adverse effect on the council, but it is a risk, I have to point out to you. So, members, those are the proposals. As I say, I am proposing to make those changes, and I'm consulting you as executive members on whether you support them. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Alison. Any comments? All agreed? The recommendation? Sure. Thanks very much. Thank you, Alison. Right then, now back to item 11, which is Children and Family Collaborative Services for Disabled Children. And who's doing this? Brian?
I'm just restating my personal interest in this item, Chair.
Right, there you are, Linda. You've got that. Ooh, sorry, Sue, I didn't catch it. Over to you, Sue. Go on.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, members. Hopefully the report is self-explanatory, but I'll take you through some of the key messages. You'll know from previous reports, and particularly the report I brought to Cabinet in October last year, that we're on a journey of transformation of social care services in Torfaen, in line with all authorities in Wales, which has come out of what was called Sustainable Social Services, Welsh Government policy. And that is about trying to make sure that where you can, you integrate or align with other local authorities or other organisations to try and ensure you get some efficiencies from those collaborations. So you'll be aware that we're in a number of significant strategic collaborations, the Gwent Frailty Programme being one. And what this report is updating you on is bringing to your attention the work we've been doing with the Aneurin Bevan Health Board and with the Newport City Council to try and ensure that the social care services and support for children and families where there are disabilities are put on a sustainable basis. And when we reorganised the Children and Families Services in April 2012, one of the risks that we identified there was because our focus in social care, and particularly for children, will always be prioritised in terms of child protection issues. There was a risk that with the Children with Disabilities team being relatively small, that those resources may not be sustainable. So it made sense for us to start looking at how can we ensure that sustainability by looking at a collaboration. And the collaboration that we've entered into with the social work team based at the Sereno Centre in Newport is proving to be very productive in terms of providing what I would describe as a one-stop shop. So very often children and families with disabilities have a number of requirements both for social care and health support, so from clinicians. And the benefits of us being co-located in Sereno is that very often families can attend appointments with clinicians and at the same time see their social workers. So we've done quite a robust appraisal of the options about should we go a bit further in terms of co-location or should we think about an integration. And this paper is setting out our proposals to stay as we are in terms of a co-location. So the preferred model is that we will stay co-located with the Aneurin Bevan Health Board and the Newport City Council social care staff based in the Sereno Centre. I think I've spelled out to you the background there, so I won't go through that again. And it's in line with Welsh Government proposals to make sure we are sustainable and look for collaboration where collaboration adds value. And you'll remember the principles I brought to you last October. Those are the principles we use when determining whether collaboration benefits the people of Torfaen. And we use those principles to determine the co-location at that time, and those are the principles we've still used to come to the determination that we don't want to go any further. We want to be co-located, so have all the benefits, but we don't want to integrate our management structures. So hopefully the key messages there are spelt out for you. We've given you some examples of, on the appendices, on where some of our improvements have been made in terms of numbers of children seen by a social worker, some of the reviews and the referral timescales being met and improved upon. So, but I will say one of the things I've tried to reflect in the report is the challenge of managing that change. And we did have a period of instability which is reflected in some of the performance measures that went down before they improved, where because we were making a change and because people were uncertain and we had some staff sickness issues, that did result in a dip in performance. But I'm pleased to say that improvement is now coming forward in a positive way. And if I point to paragraph 7 there, one of the things to remember is most of the support that social workers and their teams give to children and families with disabilities are either in their own home or in a school setting. So largely the Sereno Centre affords that multi-agency working, and particularly for clinicians and health service staff to see children and families. We still very much use our local bases, like the TOG Centre, working with Tafarn Newydd as well. And very much integrating place services. We now have a fully integrated place service for children with disabilities, and it was one of the shadowing opportunities I took up a couple of weeks ago with Julian. And that was really pleasing to see how we really do have a properly integrated play service for all children in Torfaen, and credit to Julian and the teams there. We've had really good working relationships. The other thing we've been doing is using the expertise of the consultant nurse in Aneurin Bevan. We've tried to make sure that this co-location really can evidence the benefits of that co-location by using a proper research programme. Now, we haven't got the results of that yet, because obviously that is a 3-year programme. But already some of the positives of that co-location are set out there for you at 8.2. And it has demonstrated that using that one-stop shop approach has given real benefits to disabled children and their families. So hopefully the report is more or less self-explanatory. I've explained to you the rationale and the option appraisal we undertook. Once the decision has been made, we will formally advise Newport City Council of our decision that we will be co-locating, but we won't be integrating any further. And then we'll work through what that means in terms of any of the staffing arrangements they have in place, and make sure that the staff understand that this is the decision we've made. So some of the uncertainty that they were previously experiencing, we can give them certainty about their employment status, still retaining with Torfaen Council. So happy to take any questions.
Right, thanks for that. First, Richard Clark.
It's not a question, it's just to endorse what the Chief Officer said. I think this authority's got a good reputation for collaboration, not just social services, across the board. Collaboration isn't the silver bullet to all of our problems, and sometimes we've got to be bold enough to say we're not going to collaborate. We shouldn't have to collaborate for collaboration's sake. Now that we're going into the terms of integration, the next step, I think the same bold approach applies there. Integration is not always the best thing for single authorities. I think we've been very mature how we've gone about this. In other authorities, the jump into integration has broken down those collaborative partnerships that existed, and I think for the best outcome for all in Torfaen is for this to go ahead on a collaborative process, and we in social care have learned many valuable lessons from that. I think 3.2 sums it all up, where it says it's not appropriate at this time. We won't shut the door to it because we are a cooperating authority.
Thanks for that, Rich. Anybody else? All agree the report, Joe? Thanks so much, Joe.
There you go. I think it's probably just a matter of timing, so I can move on while the report's being pulled up if members so wish. It's a fairly brief report, members, just to run through the response or some possible responses from you as a Cabinet to respond to the Council motion that proposed, proposed principally to block access to Payday Lane websites through public computers in libraries and other council buildings and from employees' computers. So that's the purpose of this report. I'll take you briefly through the key messages. I will just, I think it's going to play up in terms of pulling it up. For those people who've got a copy of the report, the key messages are in section 3, and I'll rehearse those very briefly and then just dwell on one or two parts within there. While my colleague sorts out the IT. Key messages, I think, contained within the report. I mean, just to remind members that payday lending is a very specific form of credit. It's not the whole of the credit environment that we're talking about, or the whole of the loan environment. It is a legal and a regulated service, and I think it's important to make that point as well. It's a point that was made in the discussion and the debate with you at Council. Second key point made in the report is there's very little local specific data around the prevalence of payday lending for Torfaen's particular population. What we do know, though, is that the type of population that we have in Torfaen is likely to rely very heavily on various forms of credit, including payday lending. For some people, payday lending is the most appropriate form of borrowing, and there's quite a lot of research around how people use particularly payday lending. Equally, there's quite a lot of research done by the CAB that is cited within there that brings into play some of the problems that people could face with that type of credit and lending. Nationally, and it's a very current debate at the moment, there was a discussion yesterday about perhaps taking some of the proposals further by looking at the possibility of capping interest rates on payday lending and other forms of credit. That isn't covered by this report, but what is covered is some of the proposals that the Financial Conduct Authority is making to put in place from April 2014 to better regulate payday lending. In the interim, before those controls come into place, some local authorities, and I've cited the particular local authorities that we've had some communication with, have felt it appropriate to extend their role to sort of protect, if you like, the population and particularly their employees from exposure and to offer additional education around some of the difficulties that payday lending can create. So that's covered in section 6 of the report, which I'll take you there briefly. Then the report moves on very briefly to look at some of the policy options that you as a Cabinet have to respond to the Council's motion, and those are included in the recommendations. I think possibly because the IT looks like it's going to continue to play up, I won't even attempt to move the report on the screen, but if I could ask you to refer to section 6, really, of your report, which, as I've just mentioned, really rehearses some of the issues that will be put in place by the Financial Conduct Authority from 2014 onwards in terms of better regulation of payday lending, and that's in 6.11. 6.12, I think, just rehearses that point that actually there is still further debate in this around the adequacy of even those types of controls, and certainly the CAB and other organisations have gone further to suggest there may be other things that local authorities and others would wish to consider. So picking up that point, in 6.2.1, effectively you as a Cabinet have a number of options as to how you might want to respond to the Council's motion, and they include preventing access to payday lending websites on council-owned IT. That's a practical measure and one that is easily implementable. Declining to place any advertising by payday loan lenders in council publications. I'm not sure that we've done much of that. We haven't seen any evidence of that, but as a policy position, that's certainly something you could establish. Formal support for the Charter, which is set out in Appendix 2 of the report, which I think starts to develop some of the points that I mentioned earlier around further pressure, further influence, if you like, around the industry. Active engagement with the Welsh Local Government Association to try and move other local authorities to a place where they are equally considering the possibility of additional measures. If a ban were to be implemented, and that's a ban that is just on our own ICT for the purposes of public and employees, but if that is something that you wish to implement, we may want to advocate a similar or you may want to advocate a similar policy stance is taken with other local service and public service organisations locally, so it may be something that you want to dialogue with the Iron Bevan Health Board and other big employers as well. Consideration, whether in fact at some point you would wish to return to the issue of there are other aspects of online activity that can be potentially more damaging and that can be equally as damaging actually as payday lending. But that is a very separate sort of policy debate for you as a Cabinet. And then the final point is at some point you may wish to return to the issue of direct financial or other types of support for local credit union provision. Just a word on that. I mean, local credit union provision now is much more stable than it was sort of 2 to 3 years ago when we did make one-off loans to the credit union for the purposes of financial cash flow issues. The credit union is now a much more established organisation and doesn't require that type of help, but certainly practical things around advertising, promotion of membership, possibility of other things could be something that you would wish to look at. So those are some of your policy options that are contained within the recommendations, and rather than take more of your time, I'll just move you to the recommendations. And those are on 9.1 of you for those of you who've got IT that works. It's 9.1. That the Cabinet considers which of the following options, and those are the ones that I've just outlined to you verbally, which are repeated there, which of the following options you wish to put in place in response to the Cabinet, in response to the Council motion. And then secondly, if you do resolve to ban access to payday lending sites on all Council-owned IT, then implementation can be delegated down and we can move that forward as quickly as possible. The recommendation in 9.2 also refers to the fact that it may be appropriate for us to review the effectiveness of that in the light of any additional controls that are implemented nationally. So I'll leave the presentation there, Leader, and leave you for the discussion.
Thanks for that, Dave. I want to bring Richard Clark in first. Do you want to make any comment? No? Sorry, Anthony.
To reassert the point I made earlier about being a member of the local credit union, and that's something that as a socialist I'm proud of, because I believe that they provide a sustainable solution for people who need to borrow money that's not governed by the legal loan sharks who try and rinse people dry, or the banks who try and make the profit off the back of people. But I think, rather than me sum it up, I think the Chief Executive of Citizens Advice has summed it up quite well, and that she said that she's seen the industry booming on the backs of people struggling to cope with the rising cost of living but failing to act responsibly. And she says, some payday lenders are misusing continuous payment authorities by emptying their customers' bank accounts without prior warning, leaving them without any money to get to work, pay the bills or buy food. This sends borrowers into a spiral of debt which is very hard to get out of. And the research that the Citizens Advice Bureau did had some very stark figures that it showed up. 62% of loans by payday lenders failed to establish if the borrower could afford to pay back the loan. 20% failed to make clear how much the loan would cost in total. 82% when people were having difficulty repaying, failed to treat them sympathetically, and 91% failed to tell borrowers about the free debt advice that's available from charities. So I think that the measures outlined in the report are the right thing to do for us as a council, showing that we recognise the struggle that people are facing to cope with the rising cost of living, but I hope we'll do everything we can to point people in the direction of responsible lenders as opposed to those who want to make money off people's misery.
Right, thanks, Sir Anthony. Chief Executive.
Yes, thank you, Leader. One issue that I wasn't aware of till I listened to the Today programme this morning, and I don't know if any members heard that, but it affects our affordable housing policy, is that some mortgage lenders will not give someone a mortgage several years later if they've taken out a payday loan, even if they paid it back in full immediately. So it can affect your ability to get a mortgage for years to come. So it's very important.
Right, thanks. Brian? Morgan?
Thank you, Leader. I think we probably need to differentiate between those items in Recommendation 9.1, which can be implemented immediately, and those which require further reports on how they can best be implemented. So, if you don't mind, I think it'd be helpful to say that we support both 9.1 and would ask for immediate implementation of the first 5 bullet points there, and for further reports on the last 2, and likewise that we would support Recommendation 9.2.
Anybody got any comments on that? All agreed? Yeah. Right, also, thanks so much. Thank you very much, Dave. Now then, the last one is, let me get there. Oh yes, a decision on allocation of third sector grants. Dave?
Thank you, Leader. Very brief one, really. This is the process, really, just to note that the executive member for corporate governance and community safety, who has executive responsibility in exercising decisions over the allocation of our third sector grants, and those are the grants that are supporting organisations such as, for example, CAB, Torvain People's Centre, Age Concern, Torvain AIDS for Disabled, and so on, has the option to ask for some advice, formal advisory panel around that. There is no provision in the Constitution for that, hence this brief report, which I think has been subject to further clarification and discussion. So I'll leave the presentation there and leave it with you, Leader, to respond.
Dave?
I've been promoted. Yeah, thanks. The situation is complex, and if I'm not careful, I will make it even more complex. So I don't intend to say too much, except that the advice that I've sought and been given on this doesn't necessarily make it any clearer than it was originally, because it seems to me that there's a procedural issue that is conflicting with the substantive issue. The substantive issue is taking decisions on the grant process, if you like. The procedural issue is the vexed question of the composition of the membership of a panel. Now, as Dave said earlier on, at least if I picked it up right, there is no constitutional backdrop to this, and since the executive member is the person that is designated with the responsibility of taking these decisions, then it follows that whatever composition of that panel is, that those members will be there to bounce ideas off. They have no jurisdiction in terms of demanding or exacting measures and so on and so forth. The buck stops with the executive member. I was privileged to be a part of the panel that sat 12 months ago in December, and on that occasion it was the executive member plus one other cabinet member and myself, who at that time wasn't a cabinet member but a chair of scrutiny. So in a sense, if we're looking for precedents, precedents have been set. Not that I want necessarily to rigidly adhere to the precedent that has been set, But my initial findings or view on this was that what we do is perhaps to have the same composition of 3 members, and perhaps following in the footsteps of the previous year, we would have 1 further cabinet member and a non-cabinet member, and in that sense it would give a balance. Now, this met with some support from the monitoring officer, who initially said that there is no real problem in doing that, except, of course, that the non-cabinet member might very well be a member of a scrutiny committee that might very well, somewhere down the line, come face to face with this notion that he has taken part in a discussion on how to dispense grants, and now he is meant to be taking part in the scrutiny meeting that perhaps has some kind of influence or effect on the earlier decision. I see, unless I'm very much mistaken, a way through that, because clearly if the non-cabinet member were a party to a subsequent scrutiny committee and something like this issue came up, then clearly there is a facility to absent themselves from that meeting by claiming that there is an interest. And in this instance, it would not only be a personal interest, but I guess a prejudicial one as well. So I minded to, that was my thinking originally. We had another forum where it was suggested that another cabinet member be added to that number. That would make 3 cabinet members and a non-cabinet member. But I minded, in terms of the advice given by the monitoring officer, that if we have too many people, and certainly too many cabinet members in the committee, then, and it isn't a committee, it's merely an advisory panel in many senses, we would be getting very, very close to a situation where we could be a subcommittee of the cabinet. And that would entail a more formal approach with minutes and agendas and goodness knows what else. And that is to bedevil the whole process. My view is if we are earnest about dispensing these grants in a fair and proper manner, it is right that we have some form of mechanism for the executive member to take soundings from. But I hope we're not going to get our knickers in the twist and go too far down the road of formalising the situation to such an extent that the procedural issues gobble up the substantive issue. Now, I'm not going to necessarily make a formal recommendation other than to say this. My preferred option is as it was originally. The information and advice that I've got from both Dave Congreve and the monitoring officer isn't advice that sends me in one particular direction, but just lays out a panoply of information for me to pick the bones out of. I've picked the bones out of it. I would prefer to retain the composition as it was first suggested, but I'm more than happy and open to deliberation from the rest of the Cabinet.
Right, thanks for that, Dave. My understanding is that the 3 additional members will be Anthony Hunt, Lewis Jones and David Daniels.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, yeah.
Yeah, if you're moving that, Leader, I second it.
Well, my understanding is that's what was agreed, so I'll move that then. All agreed? Yeah. Thanks for that.
I just want to make a comment, if I may, in relation to the activities of this particular panel. I could well be, with my voluntary sector hat on, a beneficiary, or may not be a beneficiary, of some of the grants that you give. I'm just wondering, Monitoring Officer, whether I should declare an interest on that, because Dave did reel off 1 or 2, of which I have an involvement with, and so I sort of sat up and took note of that. So just to say that I would have an interest in some of these grants that you may not give. But I don't put the markers on it, mate.
I think for the purposes of this meeting and this decision, I don't think that's relevant. Thank you.
All agreed? Please show. Thanks very much. That's the last item. I'll close the meeting.